That's right. Come on, nigga, yeah, let's do it. Put it to him, put some bullets through that nigga. Don't be scared, really do it. Yeah, you hard, you that gangster, you that killer, you that shooter. You ain't scared to go to jail. Come on, nigga, really do it. Now listen, man, the story starts out simple and easy.
Riding across Detroit, nothing new for decades. In part, the hood resembles a war zone. As time passes, more and more buildings abandoned and set on fire. Far from the iconic image of the industrial centre, the real Detroit is an illustration of the negative side of globalization, the consequences of the communications and information age, the roadside of the digital highway.
Gotta be the man standing, not the first but the last. It ain't about the cash, it's about that respect. I'm staying humble up the porch with the crew. I never stumble, dude. Trip out the bushes and I'm pushing my luck. I just pop.
I have my friends in here. That chicken that blood every time so she might bring me something to eat.
Do many people live here in this apartments?
4.
4 people. Is this vicinity dangerous for
Very.
living? Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Because they be killing people over here. A lot of gangs run through here, initiations.
What did you do in Ford?
Just put on tires on the assembly line.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the automobile industry is going into China. You know, we losing a lot of jobs here, especially in Michigan.
Lewis worked at Ford and knows much about globalization. He's typical of the homeless in Detroit. There are more than 15,000 of them in the city. They are enthusiastic speakers when it comes to the reasons for their problems.
Businesses that are going from the United States, there's a lot of business going, like Canada is getting some, Mexico is getting some because it's cheaper labor. And they don't have to pay as much hospitalization and union dues and all that stuff, and the employment and the rate of pay is a whole lot cheaper, so that's where they're going.
There's no work in Michigan. Even people with degrees
really.
having a hard time getting work. If you ride around some of the neighborhoods, east side, west side, all you see is vacant houses.
Yeah, you got doctors and lawyers.
All you see is vacant houses, man. When you see those white pieces of paper in that window of that vacant house, that means they was evicted.
Yeah.
Michigan Central Depot is a Detroit landmark. It tells a lot about the city's history and its path of industrial development. Built in 1913, it used to be the symbol of new modern times and prosperity. Henry Ford made it a business center at the crossing of the railroads and the tram lines. The Great Depression put an end to economic development. The great highway system replaced the railroad and put an end to the depot. It was simply not needed in the time of the car. A symbol of the automobile's complete triumph over public transportation, the station is still there, as well as all the surrounding buildings. Good times never came back to the area. Some of the buildings were used as storage until the early 1990s, but at some point people left completely. They left all their stuff inside, like it was infected with a deadly virus. But the real reason is simple. It would cost money.
I think they don't fix it is because it's too expensive, and there's no use for it, you know. And I think that says a lot about American culture of things being disposable. You know, even beautiful buildings are disposable.
Charles Enka is a Detroiter, and the only reason for him to visit the city is his hobby, a website devoted to abandoned buildings. He takes photos and then posts them online. His business and home are a couple of hours from Detroit. Charles says the buildings are sometimes used to store and sell drugs and are very dangerous. There can even be booby traps to protect the illegal trade.
Are all measuring spoons. There's 3 different sets right here, 4 different sets. 1, 2, 3, 4. Probably used to cook heroin, would be my guess. Right about the time the automotive industry quit this city, I guess, would be a good starting point for the decline. A lot of jobs left, a lot of secure jobs left, very good manufacturing jobs. A lot of that maybe had to do with the unions, that the unions fought so hard and so well for the workers that maybe the companies couldn't afford them anymore. I mean, casinos. Make sure you film the casinos before you leave town. They're beautiful buildings, brand new, gorgeous buildings. And the areas around them are also brand new, beautiful, and occupied. Lots of people going in and out, lots of money being spent. It's all based on gambling, though. You know, and the city makes a good amount of money off of that.
Another example of the decline is the legendary Carl's Steakhouse. It's been here for almost a century and once had dozens of waiters and cooking staff.
You say the motherfucker in Russia, forget about it. Huh? This America.
No, it's alright.
This America. The best building ever had.
Today, Chef Yanis and waiter Max are among the few members of staff.
We just got off here to be a smell officer. Okay?
Max is a Russian immigrant and has worked here for 30 years.
"20 years ago, you couldn't come into this restaurant. You had to wait in line for about 45 minutes to get a table. Right now, look, it's empty. On the regular, on a Sunday.
Monday rush hour. Not a surprise, the centre is empty. Dozens of buildings here are abandoned, including 12 of the skyscrapers. The main question, what to do with these massive but useless architectural structures, has remained unanswered for decades. The only giant in this ghost downtown is the General Motors global headquarters, the Renaissance Center. The industry leader has its offices here. But the manufacturing facilities are in areas where labor is cheaper. The nearest GM plants are right across the river in Canada. The country gives incentives worth hundreds of millions of dollars to GM and other car makers in order to create more jobs for its citizens. The Renaissance Center hasn't lived up to its name. GM closed 4 of its plants at its home in Michigan in 2006 to 2008 and 6 in other states. More than 12,000 American jobs will be lost. With new plants opening in other corners of the world, GM now employs almost 300,000 people in 31 countries. That's the equivalent to a third of Detroit's total population. And this building downtown is ground zero for the Detroit industrial age, the first Ford workshop. The automobile boom started here, and here the assembly line was invented. It would take the car industry away from its hometown later. The building hides a place that encapsulates the story of Detroit more than any other. The Michigan Theatre, built in 1926, used to be the biggest in the city. It's now a car park, a symbiosis of art and cars in the Motor City. The theatre lost the struggle with television as the people moved out from Detroit. After the theatre was closed in the mid-60s, it became a porn cinema, then a rock club, but neither were financially viable. Only car parking for the workers at the office buildings nearby proved to be a money earner. A tough but profitable decision. June and Lester Thompson are architecture and history teachers in the University of Michigan and work on various learning projects about the city development of Detroit. They call the total dependence on automobile manufacturing Detroit's crucial mistake in the industrial age, and the main problem began with the modernization of the industry.
They wanted to have a long assembly line. And they couldn't make a long assembly line unless they had more land, because they couldn't do it with 4-story factories. So they were beginning to look for a land to allow them to have these long assembly lines, and they began to leave the city.
Whites began moving out to the suburbs, but blacks were not allowed to move to the suburbs. And so you had an increasingly black and poor population that was concentrated in the central cities.
The developers are now seeking to breathe life back into the city streets, and some solutions turn upside down our understanding of a city.
The class that I worked with this semester, there was so much vacant land in the neighborhood that we were working with that we actually thought that one of the best options would be farms, to turn some of the vacant land into farms. I think the meaning of the word city has already changed. Yes, it has already changed for Detroit.
Charles Psenka's brewery is far outside Detroit and is a typical model of local businesses. Charles says in the world of global communications and information, there is a total freedom to choose where to live, work, and where to set up your business. And that is why the city as a civilization hasn't survived the changes.
The city of Detroit has been facing some attrition lately. Within the past several decades, it's been declining in population. Last statistic I heard, the city of Detroit has about 800,000 people that actually live within the city proper, whereas the greater metropolitan area of Southeast Michigan is over 4 million. So, you know, there's a lot of people that live around Detroit but don't actually live in Detroit. I think the world is shrinking, so I think it's inevitable. Globalization has an impact on us with everything from our bottle prices to our hops to the malt. And, you know, globalization makes it perhaps easier for us to sell beer in places like Japan or Denmark, which may have been a little bit more difficult, say, a decade ago.
You can catch us. We televise in Atlanta, Detroit, and New York. I'm cutting. Peace.
In general, the situation in Detroit can't be described as a disaster, as it may seem judging by the images. The homeless in Detroit have food delivered by various humanitarian organizations. Shelters are quite a common thing for the area. But that can never be enough for the crisis zone.
Some people, you got some people that just like to mess with the homeless people, you know. They said, they like to mess with handicapped people in wheelchairs, you know, them young guys, you know. They call themselves having fun, I guess. You know, they just, they think crazy, man. They be thinking crazy. You know, some they used to call it, partying. When 6 guys jump on one guy, they call that partying. You know, when I was at Ford, I was working on the line, the assembly line. Yeah, putting on tailpipe mufflers and stuff like that. I didn't hold the job that very long. You know. The whole plant shut down. They moved out of the city. You know, that was about 20 years ago. You know, I'm 55 years old. You know, that was about 20 years ago. They're sending more money out the country than they spending here on their own people. You know, well, that's a shame. You know, you're born and raised there and you're homeless. You can't get no help. You know, and there's so many people that's homeless now. You know. And then the shelters be full like tonight. The shelters is full, so, you know, I stay here. When the shelters ain't full, I stay in the shelters when I can, you know. Or sometimes I can stay over a friend's house, you know, but that's every now and then, you know. I never know, like, each night, I don't know where I'm gonna stay at night, you know, till it's, you know. People been dying around here kind of regular, you know. They've been finding people, you know, if they ain't froze, they either OD'd or somebody fucked them up, you know. I'm telling you, it's just a bunch of chaos, man. You know, a bunch of chaos, man. It's sad. It's sad.
So who will miss the city when it's gone? Workers in the car industry headquarters, the managers of global sales, the people who work in the few remaining skyscrapers downtown. And what will they miss? The spirit? The mood of the city? It appears the era of the urban giants in the Western world is passing, and Detroit is becoming one of the first ghosts of the industrial age.